Welcome back to Yang Daily. I'll be your host, Alex Cheney, bringing you all the Yang news you need to live your life right. Apologies for this coming out late. I got a bit hung up, but let's get right to it. It's been a while since we started the Patreon page, so I wanted to take a moment to thank all of our Patreons by name. Shout out to Peter Park, Shay Meehan, Scott Santons, Catherine Watson, Richard Porter, Renee Mancuso, Mario Rodriguez, Micah Williams, Joe Klein, Tim Hulskamp, Wes, DW, Bryson Lightfoot, Maggie John, Ira Romph, Adam, Suganda B., and Nathan Thaddeus Stankowski. Every one of you are contributing to independent journalism in the purest and healthiest way that we have available. Thank you for stepping up and supporting the media that you value. I appreciate each and every one of you. All right, starting off today with an exciting, fun, and terrifying development for some. Tesla's full self-driving beta received an update a few days ago that has taken it from incredibly impressive, but still very buggy, to being near zero intervention capable. Watch the video in the links for a really good example of it driving on very narrow and windy roads in neighborhoods and the city, with and without lane lines, doing lane changes in advance, even a hairpin turn, all with traffic. It's truly incredible. Musk has said the beta will be expanded if this update goes well, so I dare say that it will be expanding. No word on the degree, but it looks to me that it's quite close to good enough for widespread release now. There's still a ways to go, but under this pace of improvement, it won't be long. As you know, this will displace millions of professional drivers and is just one of many automation upheavals happening in the labor market. It is imperative that we adopt a UBI to help people adapt and find new ways to contribute to society rather than fall into poverty. Jumping straight from that into a very dark topic, you likely recall our earlier reporting on the developments in the case against Purdue Pharma for their criminal acts in profiteering off the overprescription of the drug OxyContin, which resulted in the deaths of an estimated 450,000 Americans, nearly double the number we have so far lost to COVID. Also, Yang's policies on treating the epidemic. Well, yesterday we got more disturbing details about the lurid affair, specifically that Purdue at one point proposed paying pharmacies rebates for OxyContin overdoses to turbocharge opioid sales. Yes, paying out bounties for who could kill the most people with overdoses of the drug that they sold. It's hard to imagine anything more heartless and repugnant. As Anand put it, this is the banality of evil, MBA edition. The revelation comes from court filings and also includes consultants' talk of purging records during the opioid crisis. Would you like to guess which consulting firm was behind the records purge and advising Purdue to put bounties on American lives for profit? None other than McKinsey and Company, the world's most prestigious consulting firm. You might remember them as the firm that Pete Buttigieg was criticized for being associated with. Now you likely understand why. According to the records, which were filed in court on behalf of multiple state attorneys general, Martin Elling, a leader for McKinsey's North American pharmaceutical practice, wrote to another senior partner, Arnab Ghatak, quote, "It probably makes sense to have a quick conversion with the risk committee to see if we should be doing anything other than eliminating all our documents and emails." Ghatak replied, "Thanks for the heads up, will do," end quote. Not only was McKinsey a key player in promoting the criminally aggressive campaign of pushing Oxy, they helped Purdue to, quote, "counter the emotional messages from mothers with teenagers that overdosed from OxyContin," end quote. A lot of competition for most vile person in America this year. The Lincoln Project podcast made a good observation about Biden's new cabinet members. They don't have a history of collusion with Biden, and they didn't spend their introduction speeches praising Biden or demonizing Americans. In stark contrast to Trump and his administration's narratives around Democrats and our world allies being enemies of the American people, while praising and pandering to dictators and terrorists, Biden's cabinet members spoke of uniting Americans and our allies, and of American values of freedom and moral character. One of them told a touching story of his relative who narrowly survived the Holocaust by fleeing Nazi custody during an air raid and hiding in the forest until being rescued by an American tank battalion. That is what America is supposed to be. a liberator and defender of freedom. It's more important than ever to remember that, with the current regime resembling far more the Nazi Party, particularly in calling fellow Americans and democracy the enemy. America is better than this. We have to be. On that note, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court rejected another election challenge yesterday, this one brought by Republican Representative Mike Kelly, who argued that a law permitting no excuse mail voting violated the state constitution. The ruling said, quote, petitioners sought to validate the ballots of millions of Pennsylvania voters who utilized the mail-in voting procedures. Alternatively, petitioners advocated the extraordinary proposition that the court disenfranchise all 7 million Pennsylvanians who voted in the general election and instead direct the General Assembly to choose Pennsylvania's electors. End quote. The court ruled no on all counts and said all other outstanding motions are dismissed as moot. The court also criticized plaintiffs for filing the suit more than a year after universal mail-in voting was established in the state and said they lacked due diligence. It's hard to keep up, but I believe this marks the 37th straight case lost in court by Trump and the GOP in attempting to subvert the will of the people. It is likely a record for most cases lost in such a short time. Amazon, the company of everything, has been preparing for years to move into the healthcare industry in the fields of prescription drugs and health insurance, leveraging both Amazon's distribution and data farming assets. COVID appears to be expanding those plans. In a recent investor meeting, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos outlined a vision for at-home COVID tests, plasma donors, PPE equipment, distancing, additional compensation, and protocols to adapt to a new world. Amazon is developing the Earth's first vaccinated supply chain. This may play out in Amazon Prime members getting quick access to these resources. The pandemic has also swept aside the barriers of regulation and entrenched special interest lobbying that have been blocking Amazon's previous healthcare plans. Expect to see it taking a leading role in the industry soon. It will be more important than ever to have a value-added tax that the megacorp cannot dodge, and it will no doubt displace more workers. Speaking of Amazon, a new article out in Canada is calling out paid sick leave. Over half of workers in the country do not receive it. It has been clearly linked to all kinds of health effects, most recently the pandemic. In March, the U.S. passed 2 weeks of emergency paid sick leave at 100% of workers' salary, up to $511 per day for COVID-related issues. In the 38 states that did not already mandate sick leave, the new regulation resulted in an estimated 15,000 fewer cases per day nationwide, according to an October report in the journal Health Affairs. We've also discussed before how sick leave is good for business. If you follow the data, it's a no-brainer. Canada's province of Prince Edward Island is the latest to pass a resolution for UBI from the national government. The effort is led by the Committee on Poverty. Advocate for your city and state to join them, the more the better. David Precht is a UBI advocate in Germany that we haven't talked about before, but he's a big deal there and very well spoken. Below you can find a video clip of him in an interview about UBI. One good point that he makes is that the Greeks of old were considered free only when they didn't have to work. The Greek civilization was one of the greatest of their time, as that freedom led them to be world-renowned intellectuals and governors. What they achieved through the morally repugnant method of offloading the work onto human slaves, we can achieve through automation and independent labor, but only with a UBI. Down in Georgia, politics has never been more happening than in the runoff Senate races, where just yesterday Democrats held a 2-hour Flip the Senate dance party with a Dirty South DJ set including classic Georgia artists Outkast, TLC, Usher, Ciara, Ludacris, Cameo, Sean Paul, the B-52s, and more. If you're not in on these races, I don't know what you're doing, but we need you. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Check out the Tesla FSD video and the Lincoln Project podcast. Don't forget to put in your half hour a day of phone banking or text banking to support the efforts in Georgia. If you need help, consult Humanity Forward, the Income Movement Aid Database, the Mission Asset Fund, or United Way. And don't forget to Yang Daily.